Hey y'all, let me set the stage for you. I'm Emma, 33, female, with a penchant for sarcasm and a history of wrestling with fertility demons, both of which will show up a lot in this story time. So buckle up for this wild ride. Growing up, I wasn't sure if having kids was even in the cards for me. I had always dealt with some fertility issues, so I didn't really think I would have kids. Fast forward to meeting the love of my life, Eddie. I don't know what this man did to me, but he made me want to have at least 10 babies. He just turned my life upside down, you know. Anyway, we tied the knot with dreams of a big, happy family. Now, as you can imagine, it was hard for me to cope with pregnancies because of my PCOS. It made trying for kids extra hard, and we were often met with disappointments. That was until we were finally able to conceive. The first time I got pregnant in my 20s, it was like riding a hormonal roller coaster. Bed rest became my new normal, and let me tell you, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. But hey, I toughed it out. And miraculously, we had our bundle of joy, Cherry. Post-pregnancy, I was on a strict regimen of bed rest. I was miserable. I felt like my whole world was crumbling. But I was so excited and happy because of this new life stage I was entering. As you can imagine, the mental stress of dealing with having a baby and being on the verge of dying was a lot for me to handle. My tissue box beside my bed became my best friend. Needless to say, it was a tough time for sure. And you know what? Friends and family rallied around me, offering help and bringing me casseroles, offering to clean up around the house and take care of the baby. Eddie and Major, my husband and father-in-law respectively, were always by my side. They made me feel like a princess with the way they would wait at my every beck and call. They really made this whole process a lot smoother for me, and I'll forever be grateful for it. I remember they would say things like, "Whatever you need, babe. I'm only one call away." "Oh, you guys, thank you so much for all the help. You're amazing." "No, babe, you're amazing. I mean, despite all the odds. You handled giving birth like a champ. Seriously, you're stronger than us all. You deserve the rest and much, much more." As I said, the people around me were pretty helpful and compassionate. Well, all except for one person, Mabel, my mother-in-law. Now, I'm not saying she should have baked me cookies or anything, but a little sympathy wouldn't have hurt. Mabel made it a point to avoid visiting me, which left me confused because we had a pretty decent relationship. When I asked Major why she wouldn't come and visit, he would always go a bit quiet or brush off my questions by saying I didn't have time to worry about Mabel. I always thought it was strange. Why would Major not want to talk about Mabel and her presence, or the lack thereof? That was until I got my questions answered when Mabel finally decided to grace me with her presence. Let's just say it was more of a storm than a helping hand. Complaints about this and that, nagging that could rival a drill sergeant, you name it. Picture this. There I am trying to heal and navigate the delicate dance of my motherhood, and in walks Mabel, the queen of negativity. Instead of a supportive shoulder, I got a barrage of critiques. It felt like I was in a sitcom, but trust me, there was nothing funny about it. Now, I'm not one to exaggerate, but Mabel's visits were like a tornado of bad vibes. I'd be lying there exhausted and emotional, and she'd swoop in with a cloud of negativity that made me question if I was doing this whole motherhood thing right. "Emma, you're still in bed? Why are you being so lazy? You're a mother now. You have to get up and take care of the house and child." I've been prescribed tons of bed rest from the doctors because I had a high-risk pregnancy. "It was all very complicated, Mabel. You know this." "That's baloney. They're lying to you because they want you to get even more sick so you can come back, and then they charge you thousands of dollars worth of medication. What you need is to get up and work." "I appreciate the concern, Mabel, but I know what's best for my body, and right now that's to rest." "Whatever. Just don't come crawling to me when that's all you'll be able to do, crawl, because you're being such a lazy bum." Her negativity started reaching new heights, like she was auditioning for a role as the evil stepmother in a soap opera. I decided enough was enough. My mental health was non-negotiable, so I sat down with Eddie and told him about how Mabel's comments were affecting me. He would normally be at work when Mabel would come, so he never really witnessed her BS for himself. He was a good guy, my Eddie. He promised to have a chat with his mom, tell her to tone it down, and create a peaceful coexistence in our little family bubble. Now, here's where things just got messier. Eddie had the talk with Mabel, and instead of a ceasefire, Mabel, offended and proud, decided to play the martyr card. Apparently, she said, "If my presence isn't wanted, I just won't bother coming around anymore." Wasn't I meant to be the dramatic one? Considering I just had a baby? Cue the eye rolls. Nobody said her presence wasn't wanted. I just wanted a sprinkle of positivity, not a hurricane of complaints. But hey, who was I to argue with the queen of misconstrued drama? And then there was Major, my father-in-law, who was missing in action during these family skirmishes. His work schedule was busier than a beehive in summer, and when he did have a moment to breathe, Mabel shot down any suggestion of a joint visit to see their grandchild. It was like a twisted game of emotional chess, and baby Cherry got stuck with only one grandparent at a time. Don't get me wrong, she was so privileged to have both her grandparents because I know not many people have that opportunity. But come on, dude. You mean you don't want my kid to experience having both of her grandparents visiting and loving on her? Just weird to me. As I alluded to earlier, when I met Eddie, I had dreams, you all. Dreams of family gatherings where everyone was happy and the room filled with laughter. But Mabel's attitude seemed to be slamming the door on those dreams. Now I was left watching Cherry grow up with an unbalanced relationship with her grandparents, and it stung. I wanted Cherry to experience the love and chaos of both grandparents at the same time, not awkwardly scheduled solo visits. It was like building a puzzle with missing pieces, and it broke my heart. 8 years had gone by at this point. Life had practically turned back to normal, with Cherry now a sassy 8-year-old and family dynamics settling into something more normal. Surprisingly, Mabel and Major started making more frequent visits, and a strange thing happened. The older Cherry got the less hostile and downright, excuse my French, bitchy Mabel became towards me. It was like a switch had been flipped, and suddenly we were on speaking terms without an underlying tension that could cut through steel. I was happy, don't get me wrong, but I was wondering why she had the change of heart all of a sudden. I chalked up that rough patch in our relationship to some form of postpartum frustration rubbing off on my mother-in-law. I know it sounds crazy, but I had stumbled upon some articles about husbands experiencing postpartum symptoms whenever their wives had given birth, so I assumed other family members might feel it too. Call it empathy or cosmic alignment, but it seemed like Cherry growing up was the magic cure for Mabel's attitude. Fast forward to my 33rd birthday, the day that threw me the biggest curveball of my life. Guess what? I was pregnant. Now here's the kicker. Eddie and I, after navigating the minefield of my first pregnancy, had decided that we'd look into adoption for any future additions to the family. The complications had us second-guessing the whole biological route, as you can imagine. But life has a funny way of surprising you, doesn't it? That night, as I blew out the candles on my birthday cake, I was feeling a bit ill. So after everyone had left, I decided to take a pregnancy test just to be sure, and wouldn't you know it, the darn thing said positive. Now, as excited as I was about expanding our family, fear gripped me. Another potentially high-risk pregnancy? The memories of bed rest, complications, and the emotional roller coaster flooded back. I broke down to Eddie, pouring out my anxieties and worries. Parenthood 2.0 was on the horizon, and this time the stakes felt higher than ever. Babe, please stop crying. I don't know what we're going to do. It's not like I don't want this pregnancy. But you're scared of something wrong happening. Right. I'm scared too, Emma. It was a lot to handle last time, but you handled it like a champ. I just don't want anything to go wrong. With me or the baby, especially the baby. And nothing will go wrong, babe, I promise. We gotta have faith. Clearly, God wants us to have another kid, so let's have another kid. So there I was, you all, knocked up with a surprise pregnancy, and Eddie, my rock, convinced me that we should face this head-on together. He promised to be with me every step of the way, and damn if that man didn't know how to make a lady feel loved. About a month or so later, we decided it was time to spill the beans to our families. The excitement in the air was palpable, and everyone was over the moon for us, except, you guessed it, Mabel. She was in the corner scowling like someone stole her last piece of pie, and when it was time for congratulations, she was as silent as a mime. Now, at that point, I was no stranger to Mabel's mood swings, but this was a whole new level of icy indifference. I could practically feel the chill coming off her. But you know what? I had bigger fish to fry. This mama-to-be wasn't going to let Mabel's bipolar nature stress me out. I had a baby to grow and a family to build, and I wasn't about to let anyone rain on my parade. The rest of the months passed by fairly smoothly, and I couldn't help but feel like this pregnancy was a walk in the park compared to the last one. Maybe it was the experience, maybe it was the fact that Eddie and I were better equipped to handle the ups and downs, or maybe the universe decided to cut us some slack. Whatever it was, I was grateful. Sure, Mabel's storm clouds lingered in the background, but Eddie and I were too busy preparing for our growing family to let it dampen our spirits. Like I said earlier, this pregnancy wasn't anywhere near as complicated as my first, so you can imagine my surprise when my water broke 1 week earlier than what was scheduled. Naturally, panic ensued, both for me and Eddie, because, you know, we weren't exactly prepared for an early entrance. Throughout the pregnancy, Eddie and I decided to go a bit unconventional. I thought, hey, let's get a doula and a wet nurse, and why not try for a home birth? Now, Eddie was of course skeptical, and who could blame him, given my track record with complicated pregnancies? He was rightfully concerned. But being the persuasive woman that I am, I managed to convince him that everything would be just fine, and that we could go straight to the hospital if need be. Fast forward to the big night, and wouldn't you know it, ambulances are taking their sweet time due to some road construction nonsense mess. It's like the universe decided to throw us one last curveball, adding to the drama and the panic. Thankfully, my doula was living in the neighborhood, practically living next door, and she swooped in to save the day. In the comfort of our home, amidst the chaos and panic, my doula delivered the baby. It was a scary experience, but luckily the little one didn't have any major complications. Finally, when the ambulance crew waltzed in, fashionably late, they whisked both me and the baby off to the hospital to make sure everything was ship-shaped. Thankfully, no complications with the little one, but as for me, well, the hospital wanted to run some extra tests just to be sure, because I was complaining about a lot of pain. Eddie, being the trooper that he was, stuck by our sides throughout the night, making sure we were all taken care of, refusing to sit down even for a second before he knew that we were both in good hands. Bless that man's heart. Come early morning, he left for home to catch some well-deserved rest after this whirlwind of a night, while I got some much-needed skin-to-skin with my baby boy, Benjamin. Postpartum at the hospital was shaping up pretty well for both me and the baby. We both had barely slept, and I was high off oxytocin, just appreciating the new bundle of joy that we had welcomed. We were under the watchful eye of the hospital staff, and everything seemed to be sailing smoothly. Then, in the early hours of the morning, at around 8 a.m., came the surprise of my life. In walks Mabel, the queen of drama herself, at the hospital. Now, this shocked me to the core, given that Mabel and I were barely on speaking terms towards the due date of the baby. She strolled in, looking uncharacteristically smiley for someone who'd been frowning for the past 8 to 9 months. "Mabel," Surprised to see me? Honestly, yeah. You've kind of given me the cold shoulder this whole pregnancy, not that I'm surprised. Oh, hush. I've been busy, you know. My life is filled to the brim with work, something you don't know enough about. Excuse me? Never mind. I just wanted to make sure the baby was okay. That was quite a scare last night. You're telling me. Thank God we're both okay. Yes, thank God indeed. Maybe you should stop giving birth since you're clearly not cut out for it. Well, as you can imagine, that's when I lost it. I started yelling at my mother-in-law, asking her what her problem was and why she was so angry with me for apparently no reason. It was like a showdown in a soap opera, and the tension in the hospital room was thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. You've got some nerve talking to me like that, Mabel. You think you can speak to me that way? You're crazy. It's a good thing the baby isn't here to witness you acting like a damn fool. You're one to talk. You need a psych eval or something. You have beef with pregnant women, it seems, which is crazy because you were pregnant. What is your problem with me? Don't be ridiculous, Emma. I don't have a problem with pregnant women. Well, it seems like you do. Ever since I gave birth to Cherry, you avoided me like the plague, and when you would come around, you would make my life a living hell. I know it has something to do with pregnancy because you dropped the act when I was no longer pregnant. I would even say that the past 8 years have been great, but now that I've given birth, you've started your crap again. Mabel, never one to back down, started yelling back. It was a verbal tennis match. Each word a serve and volley of frustration. Nurses and doctors peeked in like spectators at a tennis match, unsure of whether to intervene or let the fight continue. We went back and forth for a bit, and that was when Mabel dropped the bomb. I just think that you're taking this postpartum thing way too far. You're so dramatic, Emma. Honestly, get a grip. Excuse me? It's always high risk this and complication that, like grow up. Women from before had to give birth to their own babies and watch them die in their arms, and you need attention because what? Your uterus doesn't work properly? Birth isn't a walk in the park for anyone, Emma. You need to have some shame. She called me dramatic for needing extra medical attention and care after my high-risk pregnancies. In her eyes, the fact that I didn't opt for hospital birth in the first place made me an uncaring mother, because if I really had complications, I would ensure that my baby was well taken care of by medical staff. This was the same thing that Eddie was worried about, but of course less mean, and I assured him that plenty of healthy births happened in the home and that there was proven documentation about the benefits of home birth. I tried to explain that to Mabel, but she continued yelling and saying that it was some hippy-dippy nonsense. Yeah, you heard that right. Holistic care was hippy-dippy nonsense. I felt a lump forming in my throat as Mabel continued her assault, telling me that if I really cared about having a smooth pregnancy, I would have stuck to the hospital route. Every word felt like a punch to the gut, and I found myself lost in a sea of confusion and hurt. Unable to hold back the tears, I began to cry, not knowing how to react to someone I thought was family treating me this way. But Mabel, she was relentless. She went on and on, tearing me down for having a problematic uterus, like it was something I chose for myself, and like I could control it. Through the tears, I managed to gather enough strength to tell her to leave, but it was like Mabel was fueled by my tears, as if the waterworks were giving her the strength to unleash even harsher insults. She went on, telling me the craziest things, each word driving a wedge deeper into my already shattered sense of self. Then she said, "You think you're so special. You even had the nerve to take my husband away from his busy schedule just to check up on you because you were feeling sick. Really? He wanted to come visit me, unlike some people." "Yeah, Emma, I didn't want to visit you. You know why? Because your laziness disgusts me. You expect everyone to wait on your beck and call like you're some queen. Let me tell you something. I had 4 children, and every single time I gave birth, I was called to work the next day. And I'm so sorry to hear that. You deserved the rest and the care you needed." "Shut up. It happened for a reason. It made me strong and not weak and pathetic like you. You should pack up your things and go home to your husband. You need to cook. You need to clean. What? As a matter of fact, you should go home right now. You should clean the dishes. Are you crazy? According to Mabel, she had gone to my home before coming to the hospital to ask about the progress of the baby, and she found the place in a mess. And she found a pile of dishes in the sink. Seriously? She was going to give me crap for dishes? I literally had my water break the night before, but for some reason she couldn't comprehend that. I tried to explain that I can't just walk back home, but she's in full-on shout mode. It's like a tornado of accusations and chaos, and I'm stuck in the middle of it. Just when I thought this night couldn't get any crazier, Major's voice cuts through the chaos from behind us. Got you. Suddenly, Mabel started trembling like a leaf in a storm. I'm looking at Major like he's my knight in shining armor, riding in to rescue me from this crazy situation. Turns out, Major had overheard the whole thing and decided to play detective. He knew Mabel's antics were out of control, and he'd had enough. The "got you" was his way of exposing her for being so awful. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same. I was just telling Emma, save it. I heard the whole thing. How could you speak to her this way? I knew you had your issues, but I didn't know you could be so vile. And that thing about you working while juggling 4 kids? Why did you lie? You know you had all the support from your mom and sister during that time. Why are you trying to make Emma feel bad? She just gave birth. Mabel, caught in the act, was shaking like a leaf as Major laid down the law. He wasn't buying any of her explanations, calling her out for the evil she was trying to put me through. Major didn't mince words. He straight up told Mabel that he thought it would be best for her to spend the night in a hotel instead of at home because he was utterly disgusted with her behavior. It was like a courtroom drama, and Mabel was left broken and on the verge of a mental breakdown. I don't know why she looked so distraught, as if getting caught was the last thing she wanted. There she was, like a deer in the headlights, caught being absolutely evil towards me for no reason. She left, tail between her legs, and I turned to Major and asked him what the heck just happened. Major, looking as bewildered as I felt, confessed he had no clue why Mabel was being so awful, but he knew that he had to put a stop to it. In a moment of clarity, I suggested that maybe she was just jealous. For once, the attention wasn't solely on her. People had to take care of me and look after me, and of course, she was jealous, and that seemed to have triggered something deep within her. Now, both Mabel's husband and son were fed up with her antics. They aren't on speaking terms with her, finally realizing just how awful she could be towards me. Mabel, in a desperate attempt to mend things, has reached out to me, even asking for my help. But you know what? Every single time she calls, I decline. Sometimes toxic people need to learn the hard way. This grown woman treated me like dirt for reasons that are still unclear. But whatever it was, I hope it was worth it, because the chances of her seeing us for a while, me and the kids, are slim to none.